Hello everyone, my name is Carly. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another reading journal video. So we're going to go through all of the books that I read in the month of February of this year. So you can see that I am starting to set up my cover page. This month, I am once again using the full moon as inspiration for my cover page. So if you watched my January video, you'll know that I used the wolf moon, which is what people in Old English and Celtic culture called the full moon that happens in January, as inspiration for finding art for my January cover page. This month, for February, I'm going to be using the snow moon as my inspiration. Many Native American tribes were thought to have called the full moon that occurs in February the snow moon because of the abundant snowfall that happens in the northern hemisphere this time of year. There are other names for this moon, such as the bear moon and the black bear moon, those coming from the Ojibwe and Tlingit peoples, respectively, as well as the hungry moon, which comes from the Cherokee people. But I went with the snow moon, which I felt like was maybe one of the easier ones to find art for, and so I used this sticker that I already had from Earthbound Trading Company as my main art piece for this page. It has this really beautiful fairy sitting in what I'm gonna call a snowy landscape. It has like these dead trees kind of arching through this keyhole and some mushrooms, and it just looks really cold and snowy and perfect for what I felt like the snow moon would embody. So aside from that sticker, I used some scrapbook paper in the background here to add some texture and some different washi tapes. The owl washi tape with the birch trees is from Simply Gilded, and then a couple of washi tapes from Amazon. And then I used a frame stamp on some gray scrapbook paper to create this frame where I wrote Snow Moon into it. And then I stamped February with some typewriter stamps from Michaels. I will say this next page on the right side here, I kind of followed a little bit of the blueprint that I made in my January video, where I stamped some frames onto this scrapbook paper and cut them all out and arranged them on the page, and I'm gonna write in what books I read. I will say, I don't think I'm super happy with how this one turned out. I think it's a little bit too formulaic in terms of repeating what I did in January. It looks a little too similar in style for me. I kind of want a little more variety when I'm flipping through my journal. I don't want every cover spread to look the same. So I think I might try to remedy that in the next few months. The other issue I have is that I pulled in this red paper thinking maybe it would be just a nice accent color. Sorry if you can hear a plane outside. Holy cow. I'm gonna wait for that to pass. Okay, I probably cut out that middle part where I waited for the plane to go by, but I thought that this red paper would be like a nice accent piece to pull out a little tiny bit of that pinkish red in the sticker and the washi tape that I used at the bottom. But I actually think I wish I wouldn't have done that, because I'm not sure that this color story works for me. I was really imagining a lot more of this light blue and a snowy, cold feeling, and I don't know what kind of impression this red gives me, but it's not exactly what I was thinking, I guess, when I started this. I think maybe I wish I would have pulled it more purple or something, but either way, this is how it ended up. But I did pull in this cute little mouse sticker that I got from Temu, and aside from adding a few more strips of washi tape at the end, that pretty much does it for all of the decoration for my cover page. I read 8 books in February this year. That's pretty surprising, I think, just because it's the shortest month of the year, but I also was in between jobs at this point, and I did have a surgery, so I was recovering from surgery and reading a little bit, so I think that that contributed to my overall total books read this month. Something I want to mention about this video is that later you will see some clips that are from a different perspective than my usual clips, and that's just because I filmed some of this video in a hotel room while I was on a work trip, and so I'm hoping that the change in perspective isn't distracting or anything, but it's only 2 spreads that I did on my work trip, so if it does bother you, it's only the first 2 books, don't worry. Another example of hindsight is 2020 in these videos is that I changed this right side for the washi, And watching the video back, I much prefer the little shorter piece that I used, but alas, I did a long piece on the edge, and I don't know if I love it, but that's fine. That's the choice I made. The first book that I read in February is Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura. This is a romance about two academic rivals, Dr. Corey Mejia and Dr. Ford Matthews. Corey has a goal in life to lead an expedition into the Mexican jungle in search of the long-lost remains of her ancestor, who is this ancient warrior of the Aztec Empire. And she gets invited to join an all-expenses-paid expedition to do this, but then it turns out that her academic rival, Dr. Matthews, is the main researcher on the project. So in academia, you would normally say that he's the principal investigator or the PI on this project. There's also a little bit of a mystery going on, since there's sort of a thief in the campsite that they're trying to uncover while also trying to discover these remains. And all at the same time, they are slowly falling in love, supposedly. I was so disappointed in this book, actually. I was so in for the Indiana Jones themed romance. I love the idea of stomping around the jungle, looking for ruins, but also falling in love. I would love for more romance novels to come out in this niche, but unfortunately this one is just not it for me. This story wanted to be that, and it is absolutely not. I feel like it got lost in the sauce a little bit, trying to keep too many serious background stories going. It felt like it wanted to have that Emily Henry, these characters have a storied past energy, but I don't know if the author was able to really pull that off. I think the story would have seriously benefited from maybe erasing all of the rocky past dynamic between the two characters, make them meet on the expedition, and maybe, they have a distaste for each other at the beginning, but they grow to appreciate each other's different work styles and they fall in love that way. However, you find out pretty quickly in this story that Ford is a walking red flag and just seemingly a terrible person, it feels like, and I just really did not like his character, and I couldn't figure out why a self-respecting woman in academia would ever form a relationship with him, especially in the way that they ended up forming their relationship, which was basically, only based off of physical attraction, and she just forgave him for all of his past transgressions for no reason. Honestly, a white man stepping all over the career of a woman of color in academia, I don't see how that person is redeemable. Yeah, this was a 3-star for me, which actually is a much better rating than I even thought I gave it. I actually really disliked this book, so I think maybe looking back, I probably should have given it 2 stars or less, but I gave it a 3. Maybe I enjoyed the atmosphere, but other than that, it's just not for me. I did not like it. Switching gears here though, I next read Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is the sequel to Belladonna, which was one of my favorite reads of 2022. Belladonna follows a character named Signa Farrow, who is an orphan and is passed around to different family members throughout her life, but each family member she has passed to eventually dies in a somewhat tragic death. She is deemed cursed, but each next family member is enticed to adopt her because she has a trust fund that was left behind by her parents, from which her guardian is able to receive a significant payout from. Signa is unique in the sense that she can see spirits, and every now and then she also sees the embodiment of death himself. And Signa herself has found out that she cannot die. The first book follows Signa trying to solve a mystery revolving around the murder of her aunt. Other than that, I don't want to give any more context really, because I don't want to spoil either book here. I went into Belladonna completely blind and it absolutely blew me out of the water. So going into Foxglove, I was really excited, but also really nervous about a potential drop in quality. But I am here to tell you, it was amazing. This was one of the best sequels to a great book that I have read. To be fair, I don't typically gravitate towards series or trilogies even. I struggle a lot with continuing a series after I've read the first book. There's just something intimidating about it, or something that makes it feel like I'm tied to the series, and a lot of times I really just want to read a one-off book and keep going through my TBR and not be sort of chained to a series. And this is particularly true with a fantasy series. You will more often see me pick up a series if it is a romance, for example, because those feel much lower stakes and I can read them pretty quickly and I don't feel like I am steeped in multiple books worth of lore and things like that. This series has a decent mix of fantasy and romance and mystery, plot, and gothic atmosphere and things like that it just has such a perfect mix of everything that I really love. I would say that this trilogy specifically is definitely an exception to my aversion to book series. So if you haven't read Belladonna, I highly recommend it. And if you have, I highly recommend picking up the sequel. Spoiler alert, I have also already read the third book. I'm much later in the year right now, and I have just finished the third book in the series, and it's just as good in my opinion. So highly recommend the trilogy as a whole, and I'll talk later in a different video about the third book, so don't worry. In the last spread for Raiders of the Lost Heart, I used mainly 2 tropical papers from a scrapbook paper pack from Michaels and a sticker sheet from Mushy Works. And then in this spread, I used another sticker sheet from Mushy Works and some printable stickers from AM Paper and Art Company. And then some of the papers that I have ripped up, the black one is from Timu, and then the one that looks like a book page is a book page from an old book that was thrown in the trash, basically. These other stickers, the one I'm putting down now and the one on the far right, are from Amazon, I believe. I'm gonna use these same thick typewriter type font stamps from Michaels to stamp the name of the book on this scrapbook paper, and then I'll rip that up and paste it in the spread and then write the author name, and then we'll be done with this one. Up next, I am back at home and we are going to work on the spread for the next 2 books that I read in February. The first book in the spread, so book number 3 in the month, is A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. This book is the first in another series, which we just talked about series, and here I am reading another one. This is the Veronica Speedwell series. This is set in London in 1887, and Veronica Speedwell is our main character. Veronica is a single orphaned woman who, prior to this story, has traveled the world in pursuit of scientific inquiry, specifically pertaining to butterflies and moths. She experiences at the beginning of the book an attempted abduction, which she avoids, but then for her own protection, she decides to join a baron that claims to have known her mother to journey into London. In London, the Baron leaves her in the care of a man named Stoker, who is a natural historian, so they have a lot in common, but also have this kind of tense, angsty relationship. The Baron dies early on in the story, and then Veronica and Stoker team up to try to solve what happened, while Veronica is also still in danger from whoever has been plotting against her. I was so happy that I liked this book. This has been sitting on my TBR pile for almost 2 years, and it was so worth it to finally pick it up. I did not know anything going into this story before I read it. I just heard from someone online that they loved it and that the relationship between Veronica and Stoker was really fun, and I just picked it up. I love that Veronica is a very independent woman who travels and studies science. I had no idea that butterflies would be such a central theme in this book, but it was so perfect. I felt like the story gave me butterflies. Veronica and Stoker have such a cute relationship where they drive each other crazy, but they also have so much respect for one another. They are protective of each other, and in the end, they want to solve the problem, but they also just want to keep each other safe no matter what it takes. I love how this book turned out, and this will probably be just one other exception to my aversion to series, because I cannot wait to pick up the second one. And I have heard that everybody who's read all of the books, I think there's like 8 now, loves all of them. So I really want to continue into this series. So we'll see when I pick up book number 2. I may not need to say it, but I did give this book 5 whole stars. For this spread, I am using a lot of stickers from Leela Journals. So I have these butterfly stickers and the book stickers as well. I'm also pulling in a couple more stickers from the AM Paper and Art Co. Just where there's a blank space where it makes sense, because the Leela Journal stickers are a little bit small. I ordered the small option for these stickers, and I think if I order from her again, I might order some bigger ones, because I do really like her art and her art style. But I think I mentioned this in my last video where I do struggle a little bit to figure out what to do with small stickers on a large spread, if that makes sense. I also use some craft paper from a travel journal that I have, and then some doilies from different packages and stuff that I've gotten. The wallpaper patterned paper is from Temu, and then I also used this witch sticker from Marigona Suli Art. So halfway through February, book number 4 is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This book is a YA, I would say older YA fantasy story. Our main character is named Effie, and she is an architecture student in some unknown period of time in the past. It is pre-cell phone, but post-typewriter era. Effie is obsessed with this epic fairy tale written by an author in her world where a mortal girl falls in love with the fairy king and then destroys him. Effie has dreams and visions of the fairy king, and she has ever since she was a child, so she very seriously connects to this author's story. After the author's death, Effie sees an invitation for an architect to redesign his estate, and she immediately signs up for the task. When she arrives, there is another person at the manor named Preston, and he is a literature student, but he seems determined to expose the author as a fraud after his death. This puts Effie and Preston on bad terms right away, but as the story unfolds, they end up having to team up to piece together these clues about the author's past. This is a very dark, moody, sometimes honestly quite scary story. It is definitely fantastical and magical. I loved the folklore and fantastical themes. The water imagery was absolutely unreal. There was this constant reminder of erosion and drowning, and everything just seemed wet all of the time in this book. It was extremely atmospheric. There are some triggering themes in this story, so I would be cautious going into it. There is academic sexual grooming, parental abuse. Those themes were unexpected, but Effie moved through life with her trauma. It's not left as a convenient plot device. It is part of who she is, which I appreciated. Effie is not the typical strong fantasy female main character. She is soft and anxious and scared. She really embodies the strength of just surviving type of person. I love that she is also an example of someone who is not passionate about their career choice. She was pushed into architecture as that is the only major at her college that allows women. But she's not this like incredible student. She's actually almost failing out of school, which I think is a really interesting path to take as an author, to allow your character to not be this Hermione-esque character. Effie shows how much of a toll trauma and mental health can take on so many aspects of your life. I was really rooting for her relationship with Preston, even though they don't like each other for a lot of the story. Once they do team up, it is really sweet, and you start to really root for them in figuring out what's going on and also getting themselves out of this situation, because it does end up being pretty hostile, to say the least. The sexual creepiness that they discover through their exploration of what's going on was really icky and uncomfortable, which I imagine was the point of the story. But overall, this was really surprising and a really enjoyable read. I will probably read this again in the future. I don't know if I've said this in my videos or not, but I will definitely choose a book with a vibe over a book with a fantastic, wonderful, perfect story. And this one had a pretty good story. It felt slow for the first little bit, which is why I ended up deducting a star. So this is a 4-star for me, but I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it. That's a huge win for me. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the overall vibes, but I also think the writing is really beautiful. So I can't wait to pick up another Ava Reed in the future. Number 5 for February is Still Life by Louise Penny. This book was the one that I was reading when I had my surgery, so this was a very interesting and unique time in my life. Still Life is the first book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache series. I can't believe that I spoke ill of book series earlier in this video, and now I'm reading series after series after series, but here we are. I am a hypocrite, so let's move on. Still Life is a murder mystery with the focus on a detective named Armand Gamache. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It is French. But my mom bought me this one for Christmas, and I wanted to make sure that I read it early in the year because I knew that if I didn't, I would never read it, and I definitely do not gravitate towards mysteries, especially mysteries that stand on their own. I don't mind a book that has a mystery as a part of the plot, but just a straight up murder mystery that has nothing else to offer isn't usually what I gravitate towards, because I find myself getting really impatient and just waiting for them to get to the part where they solve it. But this one is about a small rural Canadian town where a murder occurs in the woods, so the chief inspector has to come and help solve the murder of a well-loved local artist. This had a super peaceful setting and a really interesting setup. It was written almost like a movie or a crime TV show where it just seamlessly changes POVs and you're just sort of an observer watching things happen as they happen, no matter who the actual story is following at that moment. So I really loved that. It made it very readable to me, but it is slow. I mean, the book is called Still Life for a reason. It is in a slow, small town, and it's very purposeful, I'm sure. So this was a really nice, atmospheric, relaxing murder mystery to read while I was recovering from surgery. But other than that, there's not too much else to say, but I did give this 4 stars. So it's a pretty good murder mystery for me. I liked it a lot. It wasn't thrilling. I wasn't on the edge of my seat waiting to see what happened, but I think it was purposefully slow and cozy. So I really enjoyed that. Book number 6 is Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. This is a sports romance book focused on a character named Josephine who is obsessed. She is a fangirl of this golfer named Wells, and as his career starts to tank, he ends up hiring her as his caddy and they have a romance. There's really not much else to say about the plot of this story, so I'll leave it there. I really wanted Tessa Bailey to continue to be my favorite romance author, but I just don't think it's true anymore. I loved the Bellinger sisters duology so much, but aside from those 2 books, I have yet to find another truly great romance from her. Every time I pick up a book from her, I do remember how much I love her writing style, aside from some of the cringier moments that she writes, but the stories themselves are just not doing it for me anymore, unfortunately. I really loved It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker, but this was another example of just nothing interesting. It was just kind of nothing. It wasn't that I didn't like it. It was fine, I guess, but I just didn't like it enough to think any thoughts about it. It was just sort of unremarkable, middle of the road. Sorry for the clicking noise. My cat is in here now messing around. But I'm looking to like giggle and kick my feet the way I did with the characters in the Bellinger sisters duology, so like with Piper and Brendan or Hannah and Fox, but it feels like Tessa Bailey wants me to settle for this type of story now. I've read a few more of hers since the Bellinger sisters and they're all sort of like this, and I just don't want to settle for this anymore. That's how I feel. That's so sad, but I'll probably keep reading her. I can't help it. I'll pick them up. I usually read them in a day, so it's not that big a deal. For both of these spreads, I used very different styles, you can see, but I tried to tie them together in at least a little bit of the themes, maybe not the colors, obviously they're very opposite, but I kind of stuck with some butterfly vibes in both. I also used some girl drawings from the same sticker sheet from Mushyworks, so I used like a girl in a blue dress on the left, a girl in a green dress on the right, and kind of try to tie them together that way. And then the other stickers are from Lollipop Studios, so the snail and the teapot and all of those are from Lollipop Studios on Etsy. I gave Fangirl Down 3 stars. I still have a soft spot for Tessa Bailey, so I can't help but give her a 3. I have read another one of hers since, and don't worry, I did end up giving it a 2, so I'm not so biased that I can't go below a 3, but this one got a 3 for me, so so sad. I don't know. I'll keep reading her, like I said. Maybe we'll find another gem someday. On to the final 2 books of February. We are finally here. I had a little palate cleanser in the form of a graphic novel, which was The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich by Dea Muniz. This book has a lot of cheese puns, so bear with me. We have Lady Camembert, who would like to live life without marriage to a man, but the law of the land is that women cannot inherit. So when her father passes away, she decides to disguise herself as a man, and she moves to the city of the Kingdom of Fromage to start over as Count Camembert. There she meets Princess Brie, and they catch each other's attention. They end up growing closer, and then things unfold from there. This was such a cute graphic novel. I love all of the cheese puns more than anything, but the art and storyline were also wonderful. It had me giggling throughout the entire thing. Lady/Count Camembert was a great character, and Princess Bee was really adorable. Princess Brie, not Princess Bee. This made the perfect cozy little romance graphic novel for just a nice little afternoon read. You can see that I put down some washi tape, 2 different ones from Simply Gilded, and they're both actually Kiki's Delivery Service themed, and I just thought that was so funny. I felt like they matched really well with the blue. I was trying to go for a blue-yellow theme because both of the books that I read at the end of February had a blue and yellow cover, so I just thought, how perfect is that? And I used these Kiki's Delivery Service themed washi tapes and these yellow stickers from Lollipop Studios to kind of give that yellow and blue theme. At first, I'm not sure if I loved how this spread turned out, but now when I go back and look at it, I really do love it. So it kind of took some time to really grow on me, but I'm enjoying it now. And last but not least, the final book that I read in February is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman and translated by Neil Smith. This book is all about how an apartment showing turns into a hostage situation after a bank robbery gone wrong. However, it isn't really what it sounds like. You spend the entire story exploring personalities of all the different characters that are stuck together in this apartment, and you follow them through the experience of getting out of that situation as well. There are extremely well thought out and deep characters who are all uniquely their own in this story, and you actually begin to unravel who they are and secrets about them as the story goes along and as they reveal them to each other. So this is not a high stress, thrilling type of story like you might imagine when you think of a hostage situation. This is a very closed door character study type book. This was such a fun and clever story to read. Every character felt unique and interesting. The audiobook, I have to say, was so good. I did kind of like a dual listen and read situation with this book. I cried quite a few times actually, and I laughed out loud more than I expected. I would say that Estelle is probably my favorite character. I just love a sweet old lady. And there's also a little bit of, like I mentioned, some reveals in the book, which I felt like, even though they maybe were small reveals in the grand scheme of a typical reveal in a story, they were big reveals in the context of this book. I don't know if that would make sense, but if you read it, you'll understand what I mean. There are these reveals that just feel so monumental. They feel big. And I really loved that, how you can take a really small story, really small experience, and make it feel really big by just how you tell that story. Overall, if I was going to have to describe this book in one word, I would just say it is clever. This is such a clever story. It is cleverly written. It is laid out in a clever way. It leaves the reader with just enough mystery almost to keep going and wonder what is going to happen next, what will be revealed next, what will we learn about this other person in the apartment. And it just was such a nice read. I really, really loved it. This is kind of one of the very few books of this type that I've ever read and liked. So I am really happy that I read this one. I might go back and pick this one up again in the future as well. And I do think I'm going to recommend it to my husband. So I think that's a good recommendation. I gave The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich 4 stars, and I gave Anxious People 5. I know I'll probably end up saying this at the end of every video, but thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for continuing to come back if you are from previous videos. I am having so much fun interacting with everyone. I'm having so much fun reading comments and seeing what you all think about these books. So continue to do that if you don't mind. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you think of them, and if any of these are on your TBR. I would love to hear about it. I hope that nothing kept you from reading any of the books that you're interested in. Don't let any of my negative reviews keep you from reading something. You might really love it. So just keep that in mind, that my negative reviews don't mean anything. Just enjoy what you want to enjoy and take what I have to say with a grain of salt. So I cannot wait to get started on March. I am really looking forward to continuing to make more videos. I'm having so much fun, like I said. So I will see you all in the next video soon, at some point in the future. Okay, bye.